Hey everyone, welcome to NetTuts. In today's video tutorial of the week, we're going to build a kick-ass CSS3 100% CSS button. So if you come here, you can see this is what we're going to be building. There's not a single image used here, so that's kind of fun. We are using just a mixture of font face to use this is actually a font glyph, not an image. We can talk a little bit about that later. We're using text shadow. We're using CSS3 gradients to actually get this kind of two-color effect. We're using borders. We're using Moz border radius. We're doing a lot of fun stuff here, box shadow. And that's what we're going to build in today's lesson. So let's get started. You guys might notice if you follow us on twitter.com/nettuts, I actually promoted this just a bit about 12 hours ago. So always follow us if you'd like to stay up to date on what's coming on NetTuts. So let's go into TextMate, and as always, we start with a blank canvas. Now, we're going to make this as simple as possible. We're going to give this a class, and that way, anytime you apply a class to one of your anchor tags, it'll have this effect of the button. So no divs, nothing wrapping, simply an anchor tag. And what we're going to do is give it a class of button, and we're just going to write something like follow me. Believe it or not, that's the extent of our markup. So let's come and let's load this. Okay, and there we go. So let's get started. Why don't we go ahead and do this in Firefox to make it a little bit easier to follow along. Okay, I'm using Chris Pedrick's Web Developer Toolbar, and now we're all set to get started. So the very first thing I want to do is give some styling to the body. And I'm going to set a width of 400 pixels. And a margin, let's just push it down from the top and then make it auto on the left and right. And then finally, I'm going to give a background color of kind of a grayish color. Okay. So now, to center this button, this is only for the example, just so we have a clean centered canvas. We're going to go button, and we're going to set the button's width equal to the body's width as well, with 400 pixels. Okay, and the next step is let's set a height of 100 pixels as well, and we'll set a let's set a background color to begin with of just red, just so we know where we're working. So next, by default, we need to make sure that our anchor displays as a block element, because by default it's going to be a inline display. So now we've got that. Let's go ahead and set text align to center that on the page. Okay, and now we want it vertically centered, so the way we can achieve that with text is to set its line height equal to the height of its container. So if I do line height equal to 100 pixels, now that's going to be vertically centered on the page. Pretty cool. The next step is let's set the color to white, and I want to get rid of the text decoration. Okay, that's looking a lot better. Now let's set a font size of just some mostly arbitrary amount, 50 pixels maybe. Okay, looking a lot better. Let's set a font family, and let's just do Helvetica and Arial. Okay, looking better. And I'm going to make the font weight bold as well. Okay, looking better. And we've already aligned the text to the center. We have a display of block. We're going to change this background color, of course, shortly. And I'm going to give it a position of relative in order to set a positioning context, because shortly I'm going to be absolutely positioning some elements within it. Okay, so now we can get started on some fun stuff. Let's go ahead and get to the background gradients. Now, if you don't want to do this all by hand, there's a website called CSS3please.com, and it allows you pretty much to just insert a gradient for one browser, and it'll render the code for every single browser, for Safari, for Firefox, for Internet Explorer, so it's really helpful. But we're going to do this by hand, and I'm going to set the base color for browsers that don't support gradients to 014464. Okay, just kind of a nice blue. And now we're going to take care of Mozilla, and it's going to be -moz-linear-gradient, and it's going to begin at the top, and it's going to go from 0D65AD, and to be honest, these are just mostly random colors, just slightly to create a slight effect from blue. But remember, we also need to find a point to have the color shift right at the 50% on the y-axis mark. So we need to figure out how to do that. I'll show you how. And the next one is going to be 0C5778. But my point is, with these colors, you're free to substitute them however you wish. So here's the key. Normally you might see something like this. So for example, if I change this to red, that would go from the top and it's going to start at this blue color and it's going to work its way down to red. But what if we want to manipulate it? So you could set like, whoops, you could set 45 degrees or something like that, and that's going to change it, as you can see there, to a 45-degree angle. But what we want to do here is by the time it gets to red, we want it to be 50% of the height. So if I change that to 50%, you can now see the difference. At the 50% mark, right about here, it's going to be 100% red. So we can use that to our advantage. So I'm going to go and change that back to this color. Okay, and you're not going to see, I think on this low resolution, you may not see the colors, but these are slightly different colors. And of course, subtlety is important. So the next step is we're going to do the next color, and this color is going to be slightly different, but I'm also going to set it at 50%. So if I go to, I believe I can do 014D71, and watch what happens when I also set this to 50%. Okay, let's change that to 51%. Okay, this is actually interesting. I just learned this while recording this. When I was designing this on a large resolution, I was able to set 50% and it rendered this exact effect. But it looks like I'm on a resolution of 1024 by 768 right now. It looks like it makes me go one up. So that's actually very interesting. I wonder how that would affect if I took my original button and lowered the resolution of the monitor, if that would change this gradient. I'm not sure. I'll have to figure that out. Anyhow, we're going to stick with 51% for this, and let me go ahead and put this back in while I was testing 014D71. Okay, and now you can see just a very subtle difference in color from top to bottom. Pretty cool. And then finally, the last step is, because remember, subtlety is important, and we do want to get this as much depth as possible. So at 51%, it's going to be this color, which is right here. And then I want it to continue to a darker shade. So I'm just going to do comma, and I'm going to do another one. And this one's going to be 003E5C. And once again, if I want to change this so it's easier for you to understand, you can see now it works its way to red. And here, it's just going to work its way to a slightly darker shade of blue. And now we have a really nice effect. Okay, so pretty cool. Starts at top, starts at a light blue. It makes its way to this slightly darker blue, and it needs to be at that color by 50%. And then immediately following it at 51%, we're going to change the color to an even darker shade of blue, and then it's going to work its way to the very bottom to an even darker shade. Cool. So now we need to take care of WebKit. Unfortunately, they don't get along, and we need to do WebKit gradient. And here, the first parameter, we need to specify whether it's radial or linear. It's going to be a linear gradient, and it's going to start at the top. Pretty much we're saying left, top, very top left, to left bottom, to the very bottom. And it's going to go from, or you can do from, you can do color stops. Like I believe that CSS3 site, they just do color stop at 0, and then they do color stop at 1. That might be easier for you to understand, whether going from the 2 or color stop 0 to color stop 1. We'll do the color stop method because I've never done that before in the video tutorials, but do whatever you want. And we're going to go from 0D658E. And pretty much what we're doing is we're just taking these colors, we're taking this and pretty much translating it to something that WebKit can understand. And then I'm going to do, and why don't I make this a little bit longer, color stop 0, and of course we're going to do a color stop at 0.5, and this time it's going to be this color, so I can just paste that in. And we want to make sure that we're doing commas after every color stop. So I'm going to do another color stop. And once again, I was doing 0.5 or 50%. Notice with Mozilla, we can pass in a percentage, while with WebKit, it wants to see 0.5 for 50%. So I was doing 0.5, but I wonder if on the lower resolutions, if I might need to do something like 0.51. I'm not sure. I'm going to leave it at 0.5 for now, and later we can check this in Chrome to test it, because note that none of this code here is going to be reflected in a Mozilla browser. So let's copy that, paste that in, and then finally it's going to work its way here, and we can do another, or we can do 2 if we want to change it up to that color. Okay. Or you could do color stop 1. You can do whatever you want. And that takes care of it. So if I pull this out, we have a nice, cool effect. Okay, so let's continue on and let's do some more fun stuff. And we are going to now work on border radius. And what we'll do here is set Moz, and you know what I'm going to do is zoom out here so it's easier for you to see. Moz border radius, and let's set it at 10 pixels. Okay, and now we should get these rounded corners. And we're not, which means I missed a closing paren above. Yeah, this one happens a lot. Make sure when you close this, you actually have a opening parentheses at the very front. So here at the very end, we're closing the 2 parens, but we need to do one more. And I think that'll fix it. Yep. And now we see we have nice rounded corners. We're going to do the same thing with WebKit and just apply the WebKit prefix. And then finally, let's do the official version, border radius 10 pixels. All right. The next step is let's actually set our border. So we're going to set border 1 pixel solid. And what I want to do here is just set kind of an accent color. So 368DBE. Okay. And now can you see that we have this nice light blue effect? This is pretty common. You know, we're not doing anything groundbreaking here with these buttons. You just have some nice gradients and then you have an accent color on top. So set that there. And now we're going to set actually the border top color to get a little bit of a difference. Or I'm going to set the border top to be kind of more of a whitish color. So I'll say border top is going to be 1 pixel C3D6DF. Okay, and now you can see at the very top, it almost looks like it's coming out a little bit. If I zoom in, you see we have kind of a nice white top. Cool. Okay, so the next step is let's do some text shadow. And what we're going to do here is just give a slightly black lower shadow behind the text. And I'm going to set text shadow, and it's going to be the X offset, the Y offset, the blur, and the color of the shadow. And it's going to be 1 pixel to the right, 1 pixel down, 1 pixel worth of blur, and it's going to be, if I set it to red, for example, you'll be able to see that effect. So if I were to set it down 10 pixels, you can see what we're doing. Set it all to 1, subtlety is important, and I'm just going to set that to black, or some people say you would never have a full black shadow, so set it to a dark black. It doesn't matter, we'll keep it at black for now. Okay, and now we just have a nice effect. Okay, so let's continue on and do some more. Why don't we add a box shadow? And what we'll do here is set Moz box shadow, and once again, X, Y, blur, color. 0, 1 pixel, 3 pixels of blur, and we're going to set it to black. And now you can see what I'm doing here is if you look right below the box, we're just giving it a slight shadow. If I get rid of that, it disappears. Notice how much that really helps to give it a little more depth, right? So now I'm going to copy that, and we're going to do the same thing for WebKit. Luckily, those two get along, and we'll do the official version as well. I believe IE9 will be rendering box shadow and border radius properly, so always make sure you do the official version. Okay, and so far we have a nice button. So I'm going to copy this and come back, and we're just going to put this in line to save ourselves some time. But we have more to do, so close that out, refresh the page. But as it is, we have a cool looking button. But I want to take it even further, and we're going to take advantage of font face, and we're going to add some custom font glyphs, and we're going to find a Twitter bird. So let's do that now. We're going to go to fontsquirrel.com, and I'm going to font face kits. And this is where you can have a lot of fun. If we come down here, we could use an image, and truthfully, it would probably be lower file size if we just took a little 1K picture of a Twitter bird, but the whole point of this was to see if we can do it without images. But do know that if you download a full font face file, the file size could be larger, but it just depends on how much you're going to use the glyphs. So you can grab a custom font, but what I want here is the little fun font. So if we come down here, there's lots of really cool stuff. Like if you want to take a dingbats, you can actually assign those to key letters or letters and use that actually for the visual side of your website. But what I want here is this one called F-font. So if I click on it, font info, this just took me a while, but I did find this one right here. If you look at that, it looks like a Twitter bird, it'll pass as it, so we can get away without using images. So I'm going to come back and I'm going to download that font face kit, and we'll save it to the desktop. Okay, and here we go. So I'm going to unzip that, and I'm going to bring it into CSS3 button. And I'll do one more thing. Let's change that just so it's easier to font. All right, let's come back, and I'm going to open up the project drawer. And if we come down here, they actually give you a style sheet that you can work off of. So the only thing we need to make sure we do here is, because we're going to be referencing it from index.html, we need to change all these URLs to first go into the font folder. Right? So let's change that one. And let's change the SVG version. So what it does here, just to give you a quick example, we're setting font face, we set the family, and this can be anything you want to call it. I could change that to F-on, whatever we want. Just keep it the base. And at first it's going to try to take care of Internet Explorer, so you want to make sure you do that one first. And it's going to look for an EOT file right here. Now if you're not in Internet Explorer, the browser's not going to understand that, so it's going to move to the next line. And first it's going to look for the font locally, so we could look for F-on, I don't know, regular, whatever the natural file name would be. And if it does not find that in the fonts folder locally, it's going to load it, and it's going to load font / that file, and then it's going to fall back to the true type, and then it's going to fall back to SVG. Okay, and that's really, and then we're setting the font weight and the font style, and it's as simple as that. So font scroll is nice because it gives you the code. I can simply copy that and bring it into my project. And you know what I did is I need to bring this in right here. Sorry about that. And close that out and reopen it. There we go. And let's place this at the very top. Okay, so now we have our font face. So now that we have this, we can actually take advantage of it. So let's come down to the bottom, and we're going to have a little more fun. And you may not be familiar with this if you're somewhat newer. You can add a colon after or before, and this allows you to add content before or after an element. So a lot of people use it. If you've ever heard of the Clearfix hack, not really a hack, but the trick. And what it does is it allows you to set maybe content to a period, display block, clear both, visibility, I can't even remember all this, visibility hidden, I think there's one more, height 1% or something like that. And what this does is, if a parent has floated children and the parent is no longer taking up any space and you want it to contain that, one way is to set overflow hidden, but if you're in a case where you really can't set overflow hidden, maybe certain elements need to appear outside of the element, you use Clearfix, where you set content after the button of just anything. It can be even blank, I believe. You set display block, clear both, make sure its visibility set to hidden. And what this will do is, when you add information and you set it to clear anything above it, you force the element to contain the parent. Okay, got off track there. But here we're going to use before, and mostly we're just doing this to have some fun. We're going to set the content here. But first, let's set the font family. And the family is going to be that new custom font. And it's going to be F-on regular. Okay? So now I actually had to just experiment with all the different letters to find the one I wanted. And what I found was the letter I wanted was V. So now when this V is displayed, it's actually going to be, I believe, that Twitter bird. So if I come back to Firefox, come back here, refresh. What is it? CSS3 buttons. Nope, let's open. Okay, now you can see it shows this little Twitter bird. So if I want to change this, you could even create your own font pack, and we actually had a tutorial not too long ago about creating icons. So there's just tons of really cute ones that you could take advantage of. But what I basically did was I just did a bunch because I couldn't find the documentation, and there's just all of these different little glyphs that you can use. Pretty neat. But we're going to change this back to V. We've set our font, and now we can continue expanding. So I don't want this just to be white. I want the color. We can manipulate this like we would any font to be 09232F. This was just picking a darker shade of blue, but it's still a little too small and I want to make it look a little better. So I'm going to set the font size to 90 pixels. Okay, looks good, right? But now you can see it's manipulating the text. So why don't we just do a float left? Okay, and now let's set the margin left 35 pixels, mostly just playing around with it a bit. And let's bring the text closer to it. So we'll set margin right to about -10 pixels. Looks a lot better. And finally, let's set a custom, you see it kind of looks black behind the bird. Why don't we set a custom text shadow? And that's going to be 0 from the left, 1 pixel down, 0, and 4190AF. And if I believe this is a lighter shade of blue. And now you see it looks like it's been stamped in, and that's why you set a text shadow equal to a lighter shade of the color above. And I think that is just about it. So you see we're actually doing quite a bit here. Let's go back to twitter.com and compare it against what I did yesterday. Okay, yeah, and it looks pretty close. So if we come back, just making sure I got everything I wanted, and yeah. So let's take one last look at everything we're doing here. We're using font face to create a font glyph, and luckily there's one that kind of looks like a Twitter bird. We're using text shadow. We're being clever about the way we do our gradients so that we get this 50%, 50%, two different colors. But then these are even more in depth because we have a gradient going from here to here, and we have another gradient going from here to here. We also are doing border radius. We're setting custom border colors to just provide a little more effect. We're doing box shadow. We're doing quite a bit here. But the cool thing is now, anytime I want to add a new button, all I have to do is create an anchor tag, give it a class of button. And you might want to, actually that's not going to work, but you can modify it how you want, and now you have a cool button. And then you could even change any kind of custom glyphs if you want, or if you want, you can be a little more traditional and use an image, which is perfectly fine, and truthfully is probably a bit smarter. But with that said, this is really cool, and let me know if you have any questions. And as always, thank you so much for visiting NetTuts. Always follow us for the best written tutorials and video tutorials available on the web. My name's Jeff Way, and thanks for watching. Bye.